Look behind you. Seriously, there's something missing. Every dog has it. Every cat has it. Every monkey uses it every single day. But you don't? Somewhere in your family's history, your ancestors had a tail. Not a tiny one. Not a useless little bump. A real tail made of muscles, vertebrae, nerves, blood vessels, and complete control. Then it vanished. No one cut it off. No predator ripped it away. Evolution simply erased it. But here's the part almost nobody knows. Your body still remembers it. In fact, before you were born, you actually grew one inside your mother's womb. For a few weeks, you looked exactly like every other tailed mammal on Earth. Then something extraordinary happened. Your own body destroyed it. Why? Why would evolution remove something that works so well for millions of other animals? Did losing our tails make us smarter? Did it help us survive? Or did it completely change what it meant to be human? The answer begins more than 25 million years ago inside a forest that doesn't exist anymore. Every dog has it. Every cat has it. Every monkey uses it every single day. But you don't? Somewhere in your family's history, your ancestors had a tail. Not a tiny one. Not a useless little bump. A real tail made of muscles, vertebrae, nerves, blood vessels, and complete control. Then it vanished. No one cut it off. No predator ripped it away. Evolution simply erased it. But here's the part almost nobody knows. Your body still remembers it. In fact, before you were born, you actually grew one inside your mother's womb. For a few weeks, you looked exactly like every other tailed mammal on Earth. Then something extraordinary happened. Your own body destroyed it. Why? Why would evolution remove something that works so well for millions of other animals? Did losing our tails make us smarter? Did it help us survive? Or did it completely change what it meant to be human? The answer begins more than 25 million years ago inside a forest that doesn't exist anymore. Your ancestors had a real tail, not a tiny bump, a muscular, fully controlled appendage with vertebrae, nerves, and blood vessels. Then evolution simply erased it. It had muscles, vertebrae, nerves, and complete control, a real working tail, not a stub. Your ancient ancestors could wag it, balance with it, and use it like every other mammal on the planet. Then it vanished. No predator tore it away. No one cut it off. Evolution simply erased it. A quiet deletion written into the code of life itself. No one cut it off. No predator ripped it away. Evolution simply erased it, not with a single dramatic event, but through millions of tiny invisible changes that no individual ever noticed. But your body still remembers that missing tail. Deep inside your DNA, the ancient blueprint for building one is still there, mostly silent, mostly inactive, but never entirely erased. Before you were born, you actually grew one inside your mother's womb. For a few weeks, you looked exactly like every other tailed mammal on Earth. Then something extraordinary happened. Your own body destroyed it. For a few weeks, you looked exactly like every other tailed mammal on Earth. A tiny, perfect tail, complete with vertebrae and nerves, growing right alongside your developing legs. Then your own body quietly destroyed it, not by cutting it off, but by remodeling it from the inside out like an architect deciding a hallway was no longer needed, and slowly filling it in brick by brick. Natural selection almost never throws away something valuable. It upgrades, it improves, it modifies. But deleting an entire body part, that's expensive. Evolution only pays that price when keeping the feature becomes even more expensive. Something happened that made millions of years of successful anatomy suddenly outdated. But here's where the story gets strange. Losing that tail may have done something far more important than just making us less monkey-like. Some scientists believe it literally rewired our ancestors' brains. Without a tail constantly sending balance signals to the spine, the nervous system had to adapt. The brain started taking over jobs the tail used to handle automatically. More processing power needed for movement meant more neurons, more connections, and a growing brain. Others argue it was simpler. No tail meant less energy spent on growing and maintaining it. Energy that could go to a bigger brain instead. Either way, the trade might have been the smartest deal evolution ever made. Or did losing your tail completely change what it means to be human? The answer starts more than 25 million years ago, inside a forest that no longer exists. Imagine waking up in a world where almost every animal you see still has a tail. Some use them for balance, some use them to fight, some use them to communicate. Others can even grab tree branches with their tails, using them like a fifth limb. For most mammals, a tail isn't an extra feature, it's part of survival. Watch a squirrel leap between branches. Its tail works like an aerial stabilizer. Cats twist their tails while falling, using them to right themselves mid-air. Kangaroos use theirs almost like a fifth leg, propelling themselves forward with each hop. Monkeys living high in tropical forests depend on their tails every single day. Some New World monkeys even evolved prehensile tails, so powerful they can hang their entire body weight. Imagine having a third arm growing out of your spine. That's basically what those tails became. Imagine having a third arm growing out of your spine. That's basically what prehensile tails became for some New World monkeys, powerful enough to hang their entire body weight from a single branch. Natural selection almost never throws away something this valuable. It upgrades, improves, modifies. But deleting an entire body part? That's not how evolution usually operates. Deleting an entire body part is evolutionarily expensive. It requires rewriting the genetic blueprint, reshaping muscles, nerves, and blood vessels that once supported that structure. Evolution only pays that price when keeping the feature becomes even more expensive, when the tail itself starts costing more energy than it provides in survival value. Something made millions of years of successful anatomy suddenly outdated, a change so profound that the tail, once essential, became a burden. Strangely, the real answer doesn't start with the tail at all. It starts with the trees. A change in the forest itself set everything in motion. 25 million years ago, our distant ancestors weren't walking across open grasslands. They lived high above the ground, in the trees. Dense tropical forests covered huge stretches of Africa, a world of endless green where the ground was almost an afterthought. Life happened in 3 dimensions. Every meal, every escape, every friendship, every danger was somewhere in the branches. Every meal, every escape, every danger unfolded somewhere in the canopy. The ground was a place of threat, not opportunity. Back then, our ancestors looked very different. Smaller, hairier, and equipped with long, muscular tails that constantly corrected their balance. Every leap depended on it. The tail was a living counterweight, constantly shifting and correcting to keep them stable in the air. One mistake meant falling several stories onto rocks below. The canopy floor was unforgiving. A single miscalculated leap, a branch that gave way, and a tail that failed to correct the spin meant death. Every jump was a gamble where the house always won unless you had perfect balance. The tail wasn't optional, it was life insurance. For those early apes, it wasn't a decoration or a curiosity. It was a constantly moving counterweight that kept them alive. Every twist in the air, every sudden turn while climbing, every landing on a narrow branch depended on that flexible extension of the spine. Earth's climate slowly reshaped those forests over millions of years. It wasn't a sudden catastrophe. It was a gradual, relentless shift. Rainfall patterns changed. Seasons became more pronounced. The lush, unbroken canopy that had sheltered our ancestors for tens of millions of years began to thin and fragment. Some forests shrank, others fractured into scattered patches. What was once a seamless green highway became a mosaic of isolated tree islands separated by open ground. For animals that had evolved to live their entire lives in the canopy, this was a profound change. The world was literally breaking apart beneath their feet. Moving through the broken canopy grew harder and harder. Gaps that could once be crossed with a single leap became impassable chasms. A tail that was perfect for fine-tuning balance in a dense forest was suddenly less useful when you had to climb down, cross open ground, and climb back up again. Different primates adapted to the fragmented forests in different ways. Some species developed stronger limbs for climbing thicker, more isolated trees. Others evolved larger body sizes to travel longer distances on the ground. Still others simply retreated deeper into the remaining dense patches, waiting for the climate to change back. It never did. One small group of apes started changing direction, while their relatives clung to the old ways. This lineage began experimenting with a different strategy. They didn't retreat from the open ground. They started spending more time on it, and that decision, almost invisible at first, would eventually change everything. They didn't improve their tails, they leaned on them less. The change was subtle. A generation that used its tail a little less for balance, another that relied on its legs a little more. Over time, the tail became shorter, thinner, less muscular. It wasn't being actively removed. It was being slowly neglected by evolution itself. Generation after generation, nobody noticed the slow shift happening. There was no dramatic moment when an ape looked at its offspring and saw something missing. The change was too gradual. Each individual's tail looked normal to them. Only across thousands of generations did the accumulated difference become visible. Eventually, nature seemed to ask, why keep building this? The tail was costing energy to grow, maintain, and supply with nerves and blood vessels. If it wasn't providing enough survival advantage to justify that cost, evolution's logic was brutal. The resources would be better spent elsewhere. The tail had to go. For years, scientists had no solid answer for the tail's disappearance. The fossil record showed the change, but not the cause. Early theories were guesses at best. Some pointed to changes in locomotion. Others suggested a shift in diet, but none of them had the genetic evidence to prove it. The mystery persisted for decades. Some blamed upright walking. Others called tails simply unnecessary. The leading hypothesis for a long time was that once our ancestors started walking on 2 legs, the tail became a hindrance. It threw off the center of gravity. It got in the way. But that explanation had a problem. The tail disappeared millions of years before full bipedalism evolved. In 2024, researchers uncovered a striking clue buried inside our DNA, a clue that finally explained why humans don't have tails. They found a mutation in a gene called TBXT, a tiny alteration that appeared in our ancient ancestors and disrupted the instructions for building a tail. The gene is also known as the brachyury gene, a name that comes from Greek words meaning short tail, a fitting name for the gene that may have shortened our own. This gene can disrupt tail development during embryonic growth, acting like a switch that tells the developing body to stop building vertebrae beyond a certain point. Mouse experiments with a similar mutation produced animals with shortened or missing tails, proving that a single genetic change could reshape an entire body part. One mutation alone couldn't instantly erase every human tail. Evolution rarely works through a single dramatic event. The change likely first appeared in a single ancient ape born with a slightly shorter tail than everyone else in its troop. That ape's tail was probably only a little shorter than normal, nothing dramatic, just a minor variation that no one would have noticed. If the change didn't hurt survival, it could spread onward. Natural selection only removes mutations that cause problems. Generation after generation, the trait spread through the population, slowly becoming more common among the ancient apes. Eventually, the entire population no longer grew tails at all. The ancient blueprint had been rewritten. Every human alive today may carry that ancient mutation, a tiny genetic ghost from an ancestor who lived millions of years ago. But if tail loss was accidental, why didn't natural selection erase the mutation? Harmful mutations usually disappear from a population quickly. This one survived, meaning it wasn't purely harmful after all. Removing a major balancing tool should have caused real trouble. Tails constantly shifted in animals' center of gravity. Without one, turning and landing should have gotten much harder. So how did tailless ancestors manage to survive at all? The answer wasn't replacing the tail, it was redesigning the entire body. The spine changed to support an entirely new kind of balance. The hips changed and lower back muscles grew stronger. The pelvis gradually became broader and more stable. Even brain control over movement evolved alongside the body. Balance stopped coming from behind and started coming from within. It was an enormous evolutionary engineering project, and every engineering project comes with trade-offs. Millions of people today still feel one trade-off: back pain. Your tail hasn't fully disappeared, it just changed shape. Feel the small triangular bone at the base of your spine. That's your coccyx, your own ancient tailbone. It's made of several fused vertebrae from that ancient tail. Those bones once stretched far behind the ancestral body. Muscles, ligaments, and pelvic floor tissue still attached to it. Without coccyx, sitting and bowel control would suffer. Evolution didn't erase the tail completely, it recycled it. Nature keeps what's useful and discards only what it must. The tail wasn't erased out of cruelty, it was recycled because the cost of keeping it finally outweighed the benefit. Every evolved feature is a balance sheet written in bone, and perhaps the strangest evidence of our tailed past appears before we're even born. Every human embryo briefly grows a real tail, and what happens next is one of the most extraordinary transformations inside the human body. Quick question: if evolution suddenly gave humans one ancient feature back, would you choose a tail? Or would you rather have something completely different? Like night vision, wings, or the ability to regenerate lost limbs? Drop your answer below. A tail, night vision, or the power to regrow limbs. Each option reveals something about what we lost. But the real story isn't about getting something back, it's about understanding what evolution quietly took away and what it left behind, long before you took your first breath. Before your heart fully formed, before your fingers separated, your body quietly revealed a secret, an ancient blueprint, hidden inside every human waiting to be read. Around the 4th to 6th week of development, every human embryo grows a tail. Not something that merely resembles one, an actual embryonic tail, complete with vertebrae and muscles, following the same ancient instructions that build tails in every other mammal. At that stage, the tail is longer than the developing legs. For a brief moment, your body prioritizes a structure that will soon disappear. A ghost of an anatomy your ancestors used millions of years ago. If you looked at a human embryo beside the embryo of a monkey or another mammal at that same stage, telling them apart would be surprisingly difficult. The blueprint is nearly identical, our shared evolutionary inheritance written in tissue. Evolution rarely builds a species completely from scratch. It's an editor, not an inventor. It takes what already exists and modifies it, generation after generation, until the original is barely recognizable. Evolution starts from an ancient blueprint, then slowly edits it. Your embryo is almost like a history book, turning millions of years of evolution into a few weeks of development, a living record of where we came from. Then something remarkable happens. Specialized cells begin breaking down the tail tissue in a carefully controlled process. Your body isn't cutting off the tail, it's remodeling it, like an architect redesigning a building from within. The vertebrae fuse together, and the muscles reorganize. The remaining bones compress into what becomes the coccyx, your tailbone. Evolution didn't erase the tail completely. It recycled it, keeping the parts that still had value. The remaining bones compress into a single small structure, the coccyx, your tailbone. The body isn't cutting off the tail. It's remodeling it, like an architect repurposing an old wing into a new room. Every single human alive has gone through this transformation. Every one of us briefly carried the blueprint of our ancient ancestors, but evolution isn't flawless. Very rarely, a baby is born with what appears to be a tail. For centuries, such cases were treated as supernatural signs or mythical omens. Modern medicine tells a different story. Most so-called human tails are explained by rare developmental differences, not magic. Many are small, soft tissue growths containing fat, connective tissue, blood vessels and nerves, not true tails. Most do not contain the fully developed vertebrae and muscles found in the functional tails of monkeys or cats. They aren't a return to our ancient ancestors, not a genetic throwback to the tailed apes of 25 million years ago. Instead, they are reminders of how incredibly complex building a human body really is. Billions of cells, millions of instructions. Every now and then, one tiny developmental pathway continues a little longer than expected, a quirk, not a leap backward. The instructions for growing a tail haven't completely disappeared. They're still buried deep inside our biology, mostly silent, mostly inactive, but never entirely erased. They stay buried, mostly silent, deep inside human biology. If tails were lost, what did humans actually gain instead? Balancing on two legs while carrying a tail wastes energy. Removing that weight helps shift the body's center of gravity. Stronger hips and a realigned spine made upright walking easier. Scientists still debate exactly how much this aided bipedalism. Tail loss actually happened earlier, within the wider ape lineage. It occurred long before humans themselves ever evolved, so tail loss wasn't the direct cause of walking upright, but it likely made later evolutionary changes far easier. Evolution rarely happens through one single dramatic leap. It builds instead through countless small improvements over time. A mutation here, a stronger muscle there, a different pelvis. Each change was invisible on its own, alone. None of these changes create a human being. Each one is just a single piece of a puzzle no one knew was being assembled. Together, over millions of years, they transformed an ape completely. Each small step built on the last, until the creature barely resembled its ancestors. That transformed ape eventually built cities and flew into space, all from a body that had quietly abandoned its tail millions of years earlier, and still wonders today why it no longer has a tail. The question echoes across millennia, and answered by the very biology that erased the answer. The strangest part, evolution keeps changing humans right now. It never paused for our species, and it never will. It never actually stopped. It only slowed far down, to a pace so gradual that entire civilizations rise and fall between noticeable shifts. It's too gradual to notice within one human lifetime. Evolution's brushstrokes are invisible unless you zoom out across centuries. Every generation brings small new genetic variations, tiny typos in the ancient instruction manual that sometimes turn out to be useful. Most variations vanish forever within just a few generations. They appear, flicker, and disappear like sparks from a fire. Once in a while, one quietly reshapes an entire species, a single change so small it goes unnoticed that eventually rewrites the future. No ape ever woke up realizing its tail was suddenly gone. The change was so gradual that not a single individual ever knew it was happening. No ancient ape ever woke up and noticed something was missing. There was no dramatic moment, no celebration, no funeral for the tail. Just millions of tiny changes accumulating so slowly that no individual ever noticed, until one day there simply weren't any tailed apes left in that lineage. Every human, every chimpanzee, every gorilla, and every orangutan became descendants of that extraordinary transformation. What feels permanent today is often just evolution's latest draft, not its final version. Hands-free from constant balancing work eventually enabled tool-making and long-distance walking across open terrain. That freedom later led to organized hunting, shared knowledge, and the first permanent settlements. And one of those countless small steps was simply letting go of a tail, a change so gradual nobody even noticed it happening. It's incredible. The feature you never think about may have helped shape everything you are today. Sometimes history isn't written in books. Sometimes it's written inside your skeleton. Humans often think evolution works like an engineer, always adding and improving towards some perfect design. But that's not how it works. Evolution isn't trying to create perfection. It's trying to create good enough. If a feature costs more energy than it's worth, it disappears. There is no master plan, no finish line, no perfect design. Just billions of tiny experiments running continuously for nearly 4 billion years. Your body isn't perfect. It's simply the latest successful version of an ancient experiment running for nearly 4 billion years. Evolution doesn't build for perfection. It builds for good enough. And somewhere deep inside, hidden beneath muscles and skin, rests a tiny reminder of the ancestors who once swung through forests with tails behind them. So look behind you one more time. There's nothing there. At least nothing you can see. No tail, no movement, no reminder of what was once there. But your body remembers. Every time you sit down, every time your lower back shifts, every time an embryo grows and then reshapes its tiny tail, your body recalls an ancient past your mind never experienced. But hidden beneath your skin, your tail is still telling its story. The coccyx at the base of your spine isn't a useless leftover. It's a recycled anchor for muscles, ligaments, and your pelvic floor. Every time you sit, walk, or support your internal organs, you're using a part of an ancient tail that evolution refused to throw away. It simply found a new job. The strange truth is, humans didn't simply lose their tails, we traded them, not for one single ability, but for a completely different way of living. A body built for balance without one, hands free to create, a spine designed for a new future, and a story stretching back millions of years that most people never realize they're carrying inside their own skeleton. The next time someone asks what makes humans different from every other animal, don't start with intelligence or language or civilization. Start with what's missing. Because sometimes the most important part of your evolution is the part that disappeared. A tail you never had, but that shaped everything you are. A silent ghost in your skeleton that tells the story of a trade you never knew you made. If evolution gave humans one ancient ability back tomorrow, what would you choose? A tail? Night vision? The ability to regrow lost limbs? Or something else entirely? I read every comment, and many of the best documentary ideas come directly from questions like these. Because the human body is filled with mysteries, and this is only one of them. I'll see you in the next one.